David Karp, the frightening case of the Trailside Killer. David Carpenter, that's his actual name. Welcome. He's that guy right there, the old guy. Anyways, make sure you like, subscribe, leave a comment on what you liked, and let's get into this creepy old guy's history. Alright, so David Carpenter, also known as the Trailside Killer, spent the years from 1979 to 1981 preying on hikers and nature walkers in and around Northern California's outdoor spaces. The Santa Cruz Mountains and Marin County beauty spots like Point Reyes National Seahorse, a vast expanse of protected coastline in Northern California, were Carpenter's favorite hunting grounds for victims. Carpenter killed 10 people and possibly several more, with 2 survivors from his attacks, Stephen Hartley and Lois Rina, the mother of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills stars Lisa Rina. Criminologists have described Carpenter as having a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde character, sometimes the amiable, bumbling, stuttering Mr. Nice Guy, the next an evil, sadistic hunter of women in the wilderness, ready to impart unspeakable violence. Alright, so the early life of David Carpenter. David was born in San Fran on May 6, 1930. He was physically abused as a child by his alcoholic father Elwood and domineering mother Frances. Between the ages of 3 and 11, David had severe stutter, a persistent bedwetting problem, and enjoyed being cruel to animals. The McDonald Triad, also known as the Triad of Sociopathy or the Homicidal Triad, is a set of 3 factors that has been suggested if any combination of 2 or more are present together to be predictive of or associated with later violent tendencies, particularly with relation to serial offenses. The triad was first proposed by psychiatrist J.M. MacDonald in the Threat to Kill, a 1963 article in the American Journal of Psychiatry. However, although it remains an influential and widely taught theory, subsequent research has generally not validated any of this line of thinking. The triad links cruelty to animal, obsession with fire setting, and persistent bedwetting past a certain age to violent behaviors, a particular homicidal behavior and sexual predatory behavior. Further studies have suggested that these behaviors are actually more linked to childhood experience of parental neglect, brutality, or abuse. Some argue this in turn results in homicidal proneness. Carpenter was forced to take ballet and violin lessons as a child and had a propensity to dress in garish clothes. This, together with a stutter, meant he was a target for bullying at school. At age 14, Carpenter was sentenced in California's Napa State Hospital for undisclosed sex offenses. 3 years later, he was sentenced to California Youth Authority after he was caught molesting his cousins, who were 3 and 8 years old. Following his release, Carpenter lived what appeared to be an ordinary life. In 1955, the 25-year-old man married 19-year-old Ellen Heatley. The couple had 3 children together: Michael, David, Gabrielle Louise, and Sears Ann. Despite having 3 children, the couple's marriage was far from normal. Ellen told authorities that her ex-husband was a sex addict who demanded intercourse at least 3 times a night. Alright, so now we know a little bit about his history. Let's actually get into who David was, the killer. Carpenter was linked to many serious crimes and at one time was even linked to the infamous Zodiac Killer murders. The Zodiac, if you don't know, murdered 5 victims in Benicia, Vallejo, Napa County, and San Francisco, respectively, December 1968 and October 69, targeting young couples, with two of the men surviving attempted murders. However, in 1988, it was conclusively proven in the court that Carpenter was incarcerated during the several of the Zodiac murders. So let's get into the first victim. Lois Rena, or Lois D. Andrade. David Carpenter's first attack in July 1906 was Lois D. Andrade, now known as Lois Renan. Lois' daughter Lisa Renan would go on to become a TV reality star. He knew Lois from work, and since she had just a new baby, he asked her whether she wanted to come and see the new family arrival. Lois was acquainted with Carpenter's wife, and she felt comfortable going with them. He picked up Lois at the bus stop as agreed, but then he started driving down a deserted road. He then attacked her, tried to rape her, and tried to kill her. She was stabbed in the hand and hit in the head with a hammer a number of times. Luckily, military policeman Wayne Hicks had seen them drive down the road and knew no one was supposed to be down there. He then followed them. Hicks tried to stop the assault. The Carpenter shot at him, and Hicks returned fire, hitting him in the stomach and leg. Lois quotes, "I thought that was it. He was straddling me. He had a hammer in one hand and a knife in another." For the result of Lois, Carpenter was sentenced to 14 years in federal prison for Carpenter was sentenced to 14 years in federal prisons. Carpenter was sentenced to 7 years in prison for kidnapping, rape, and attempted murder. However, he only served about 7. In 1970, he returned to prison after being charged with kidnapping. He was released in 1977 after serving another 7 years. Etta Gahn, there's no picture of her, but on August 1979, Etta Gahn was spent afternoon hiking on the trails of Mount Tamalpais, I think, which overlooks San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge. When Etta failed to return home after a hike, her husband called the police and reported her missing. The police mobilized several K-9 units, and the first search for Etta turned up with no clues. As to Etta's whereabouts, the second search began the next day at dawn, and Etta's naked body was discovered in a kneeling position. Her killer had stood behind her and shot her once in the head, execution style. Investigators also discovered that the killer had rummaged through her purse and stolen her credit cards and a pair of sunglasses. However, she had not been sexually assaulted. The next one is Mary Frances Bennett. On October 21st, 1979, Mary Bennett's long, agonized screams could be heard by nearby golfers. Unfortunately, they ignored them. She was mutilated and stabbed 25 times after she was attacked while jogging, then buried in a shallow grave under a layer of dirt and branches. She was found still warm by a group of hikers following a blood trail near the Palace of Legion of Honor at Land's End. One police officer said she had been butchered. She was only 23 when she was murdered. Mary grew up in Deer Lodge, Montana, and had recently moved to San Francisco after graduating from an accounting school in Montana. She was an intern at Post Street accounting firm. When she was killed, she was wearing a t-shirt that read, "Hell's Accountant." Carpenter was also suspected, but police were never able to bring a case against him for the crime in the 1980s following his arrest. In 2012, Inspector Joe Toomey of the Cold Case Unit said crime lab technicians had recovered unspecified DNA evidence in December 2011. They learned in January 2012 that it had matched a sample of Carpenter's DNA in a state database. The family always assumed Carpenter was responsible. Barbara Schwartz was 23, hiking with her dog in March 1980 when Carpenter leapt out from behind a tree and attacked her. A female eyewitness was out jogging the day. A female was also jogging that day, and she saw a man attack Barbara from behind with a knife. By the time the eyewitness came back with police officers, she was dead and the killer was nowhere to be seen. Thanks to eyewitness, homicide detectives now had a general description. The jogger described him as slim and somewhere near the age of 25. Neither of these proved to be accurate. Police found a pair of bifocal glasses at the crime scene. Days later, a couple of boys found the murder weapon, a 25-centimeter boning knife that proved to have Schwartz's blood all over it. The glass turned out to be prison-issued specs, thus suggesting the killer was a former or escaped inmate. Damn, it was really his glasses that gave it away too. I wonder if they had a serial number on them or not, but they don't really say here. Alright, Richard and Cynthia. So, Richard Stowers on the right, was 19, California, and Cynthia Moreland, 18, planned to get married. However, the couple went missing in mid-October 1980 after setting off for a hike trip at Point Reyes National Seashore Park. Their bodies were discovered during the search for Diane O'Connell and Shauna May in November 1980. At the time of their deaths, Richard Stowers was stationed with the U.S. Coast Guard and at the Two Rock Coast Guard training base. Moreland was a recent graduate of Rancho Cotete High School, where she had been a popular cheerleader. Shell casings were found at the scene where a match with those from the Alderson crime scene. As it turned out, the gun used in all three murders was a .38 caliber pistol. Some sources say it was a .45 caliber gun that had been purchased in October 1980. The buyer, Molly Burnell, bought the firearm at a gun store in San Leandro, California. Burnell gave the gun to Carpenter, who could not legally purchase firearms because of his criminal record. Burnell would later state that she gave the gun to Carpenter as a payment for her debt to Carpenter, who had provided Burnell with several items for her flea market. Diane O'Connell and Sean May. So they were looking for her. This is Diane O'Connell when they found Richard and Cynthia. Damn. So on November 28, 1980, Carpenter raped and murdered 22-year-old Diane O'Connell as well as 25-year-old Shauna May. Both women had decided to hike in Point Reyes National Seashore Park on Sky Trail. Coincidentally, the area was the filming location of John Carpenter, no relation to David Carpenter. The Fog, a February 1980 horror film starring Adrienne Barbeau, Jamie Lee Curtis, Janet Leigh, and John Houseman. Diane was in a group of 3 hikers, and she was second in the group coming down the trail. The first of the group arrived at the bottom, but Diane was nowhere to be seen. At between 3:10 and 3:20, hikers in the park heard several gunshots. Rangers, volunteers, and police combed the park. One searcher saw a shoe sticking out of some ferns. On a closer inspection, he found 2 bodies, which were Richard and Cynthia. They had been left face down in the underbush. Later that day, Diane and Shauna's bodies were also discovered, found side by side and face down, making it 4 bodies in one day. The killer had stuffed a pair of underpants into O'Connell's mouth and nose while leaving another pair of blood-stained panties on her arm. Forensic examination proved that Diane had been strangled with a narrow piece of wire or cord while still alive. She and Shauna had been shot in the head. May's corpse showed ligature marks on her wrist. Her body contained semen in her vagina and anus. Although no semen was found on O'Connell's body, she, like May, had been brutally raped before death. The most troubling part about this double murder was the fact that neither woman knew the other. Therefore, detectives concluded that one woman had come upon Carpenter murdering the other woman by chance, thus sealing her fate. That's actually so unfortunate. Ellen Hansen and Steve job in February 1981 after working for a chain distributor following his release from prison. He took a job with Econo Quick Print, a small printing shop in Hayward, California. Carpenter struck in the Henry Cowell Redwood State Park on March 29, 1981, when he came upon 20-year-old Ellen Hansen and her friend 20-year-old Stephen Hartle. The pair was having a walk across the Santa Cruz Mountains. They were on spring break from UC Davis and had just gone past the observation tower. Carpenter told them both that he wanted to rape Ellen, and after sexually assaulting her, Carpenter shot them both. Steve confronted Carpenter and shot Ellen. Hansen died, whilst Hartle managed to survive despite being shot in the neck. Hartle provided police with a clear description of Hansen's killer, and he would also later pick out Carpenter in a police lineup. So Hartle was able to survive, but Ellen unfortunately was not. Also, a 10-year-old girl took a piece of cardboard and drew the shape of a red car. That car turned out to be Carpenter's red Fiat. Heather Skaggs, 20, went missing on May 1st, 1981. Her decomposing body would later be found in Big Basin State Park. More than any of his other victims, Carpenter had a direct link to Heather, a college undergraduate. She had worked at Econo Quick Print to make some extra money, and David Carpenter was her co-worker. Gossip around the office was... just one second. It's gonna get water. Gossip around the office was that the older Carpenter was a creep who wanted to date the much younger Skaggs. Apparently, Heather did not take notice of this office gossip. Her boyfriend Dan Pickle told police Heather had asked Carpenter to give her a ride to Santa Cruz so she could make a purchase, a car from one of his friends. Carpenter had made it very attractive for her to go and see the car by offering to check the vehicle, loan her money, etc. Fortunately, she had left details of Carpenter with her boyfriend, as he was a little concerned. That would be the last time that anyone saw Heather alive. On May 24th, 1981, hikers in Big Basin State Park discovered her nude and decomposing corpse. Semen found in her vagina, and the autopsy proved she had died from a point-blank gunshot to the face. Besides the fact that Carpenter was the last person to be seen with her before her death, investigators proved that the same .38 caliber handgun had killed both Skaggs and Hansen. This gun was traced back to Carpenter. Later, it was emerged that Carpenter went to dinner and the ballet the evening he murdered Heather, seeming oblivious to the murder earlier in the day. Anna Kelly Menjivar, on June 16th, in 1981, the body of Anne was found at Castle Rock State Park. Her body was too decomposed to determine a cause of death. Carpenter was never charged, but he was also the chief suspect in the disappearance and death. She disappeared December 28, 1980. Her family and friends ruled out the idea that the aspiring college student simply ran away, and this was confirmed when hikers in Castle Rock State Park found Anne's skeletal remains. Prior to her death, Carpenter was known to frequent the Continental Savings and Loan where Anne worked as a part-time teller. Eventually, after awkward and charmless, Carpenter was seen chatting with Anne. One of the bank's customers warned management about him. This occurred just days before her disappearance. Carol Lawlin. Carol she was 19, worked in Curry Village gift shop in Yosemite National Park in September 1979. She mysteriously vanished, and her remains were found at the base of a tunnel near Cookie Cliff. Some months later, the body was discovered by two men descending Castaneda Wall near Big Oak Flat Road on April 28, 1980. Carpenter worked charged with 5 counts of murder, rape, and attempted rape on July 31st, 1981. Due to all the publicity that the murders received in Santa Cruz County, Carpenter's trial was moved to Los Angeles County. He was convicted on 5 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Richard Stowers, Cynthia Moreland, Shauna May, Diane O'Connell, and Ann Alderson. Carpenter was also found guilty of raping 2 of the women and attempting to rape a third, sentenced to death in the gas chamber on November 16, 1984. He remains on San Quentin's death row. Following his conviction for the Marin County murders, Carpenter was tried and subsequently convicted by a Santa Cruz jury for the murders of 2 other women, Ellen Hansen and Heather Skaggs. The same jury found Carpenter guilty of the attempted murder of the Hansens' hiking companion Stephen Hartley, the attempted rape of Hansen, and the rape of Skaggs. In 1995, the Santa Cruz convictions were overturned due to the jury misconduct. The California State Supreme Court later reinstated them. Carpenter was also the prime suspect beyond the 5 murders. While he was charged, 2 of those convictions would later be overturned due to jury misconduct. Although he was never convicted, the evidence against Carpenter in the murders of Ida Gain and Barbara Schwartz is very strong. In December 2009, San Francisco police re-examined the evidence from the October 21st, 1979 murder of Mary Frances Bennett, who was jogging at Land's End when she was attacked and stabbed to death. DNA sample obtained from the evidence was matched to Carpenter through State Department of Justice files. In February 2010, police confirmed the match with the recently obtained sample from Carpenter. Alright, so let me just break this down and make it easier. So, in the case of Richard, he was convicted. In the case of Cynthia, he was also convicted. Diane, he was also convicted. And Anne, and another for Anna, she was also convicted. And then for Ellen, he was sorry. So for Ellen's case, let's see if I can get her picture. 1 second. Where'd it go? Alright, I don't have it, but anyways, for Ellen, he was overturned but reinstated. For Heather, overturned but reinstated. Ida, he was just suspected. For Mary, confirmed. Anna, for hers, he was suspected. And then Carol, he was also suspected. So, damn, I'm glad that they were able to catch on to him. But what do you guys think about this story? Let me know, and please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, as I will be doing more ASMR. Thank you so much for the support. I really appreciate it, and I enjoy making these videos for you guys. If there's anything I can change, please let me know. Thank you so much. Have a good day, and I will see you guys very soon.